Hari. Yukta kama karena pale sakto nibhajate. Translation. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to me, whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. Text 13. Sarva karmani manasa sanyasya te sukham vashi navadare pure naiva kurvanta. Translation. When the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done. Text 14. Na kartam tvam na karmani lokasya shrikjate prabhu na karma phalas yogam swabhavastu pravartate. Translation. The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. Text 15. Nada te kasyachit papam na chaiva sukritim vibhahu agyanena vritam gyanam tena yanti janvaha. Translation. Nor does the Supreme Spirit assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodying beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. Prakashayati tata param. When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nations is destroyed, then his knowledge, revealing everything, as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. Text 17. Tad buddhayas tad atmanas tan nishtas tat parayanaha gachantya punarnatritim jnana nirduta kalmasaha. Translation. When one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge are fixed in supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation. Text 18. Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmane Kavihastini Shuni Chaiva Srapakecha Pandita Samadarshinaha. Translation. The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmin, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater outcasts. Text 19. Ihaiva jita sargo yesham samyejitam nirdosham hi samam brahma tasmad brahmani te stitaha. Translation. Those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity have already conquered the conditions of birth and death. They are flawless like Brahman, and thus they are already situated in Brahman. Text 20. Na prashichet priyam papya, no dvijit prapya chapiram, stirda budhir aso mudho, Brahma vid Brahmani stitaha. Translation. A person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant, nor laments upon attaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, unbewildered, and who knows the science of God, is to be understood as already situated in transcendence. Text 21. Maya sparsheshva saktatma vindat yatmani yat sukam sabrahma sukam akshayate. Translation. Such a liberated person is not attracted to material sense pleasure or external objects, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. In this way, the self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness, for he concentrates on the supreme. Last text, text 22. Yehi samsparsha javoga dukkha yunti adyanta konteya nadeshu ramate buddha. An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery, which are due to contact with material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. Okay, so we'll go back to text 12, chapter 5. Translation and purports by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to me, whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. Purport. The difference between a person in Krishna consciousness and a person in bodily consciousness is that the former is attached to Krishna, whereas the latter is attached to the results of his activities. The person who is attached to Krishna and works for him only is certainly a liberated person, and he is not anxious for fruit of rewards. In the Bhagavatam, the cause of anxiety over the result of an activity is explained as being due to one's functioning in this conception of duality, that is, without knowledge of the absolute truth. Krishna is the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. In Krishna consciousness, there's no duality. All that exists is a product of Krishna's energy, and Krishna is all good. Therefore, activities in Krishna consciousness are not on the absolute plane. They are transcendental and have no material effect. One is, therefore, filled with peace in Krishna consciousness. One who is, however, entangled in profit calculation for sense gratification cannot have that peace. This is the secret of Krishna consciousness. Realization that there is no existence besides Krishna is the platform of peace and fearlessness. Maharaj, would you like to make comments?
Back to that was 39. What's your text? Back to that. 5:12.
Krishna's energy is all pervading, it's all around us. As Prabhupada says in the purport here, he says there's no duality. So one might think, oh, there's no duality, everything's the same. But that's not exactly what's being said here. According to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna himself, he promulgates the philosophy of Achinta Veda Veda Tattva, which is simultaneous oneness and difference. Inconceivable simultaneous oneness and difference. So at the same time, all this energy is Krishna. You know, as we know, we're part and parcel of Krishna. Mamavam Shojivo KG. But we have to understand that we might be the same quality as Krishna, but a drop in the ocean, and Krishna is the whole ocean. He is the supreme consciousness, and we just have minute consciousness and minute freedom, and he has supreme freedom. But what's also being said here is that if we act in Krishna consciousness, that's above the material nature. It's transcendental to material nature. And so those actions aren't factored into, they're not fruit of activity. There's no karma involved. And so they're above this material nature, and they actually bring about satisfaction to oneself. And it's the only way to be fully satisfied. Savai pumsam parodamo yato bhaktira dokshaje ahaitukya pratihata yayatma suprasidity, fully satisfied. It's the only way to become so fully satisfied is to serve Krishna unmotivated and uninterrupted. So when we talk about bhakti, that's what we talk about, is serving Krishna unmotivated and uninterrupted. And in that way, we can become fully satisfied. And that's what we're after. We're after that pure devotional service. Where it's not impaired by fruit of activity or speculation. Okay, we'll go to text 13. When the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done. Purport. The embodied soul lives in the city of 9 gates. The activities of the body, or the figurative city of body, are conducted automatically by the particular modes of nature. The soul, although subjecting himself to the conditions of the body, can be beyond those conditions, if he so desires. Owing only to forgetfulness of his superior nature, he identifies with the material body and therefore suffers. By Krishna consciousness, he can revive his real position and thus come out of his embodiment. Therefore, when one takes to Krishna consciousness, one at once becomes completely aloof from bodily activities. In such a controlled life, in which his deliberations are changed, he lives happily within the city of 9 gates. The 9 gates are described as follows. Navadware puri dehi hamso lela yate bahi vasi sarvasya lokasya star it's the wrong meter starvasya charasya cha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is living within the body of a living entity, is the controller of all living entities all over the universe. The body consists of 9 gates, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, 1 mouth, the anus, and the genital. The living entity in his conditioned stage identifies himself with the body, but when he identifies himself with the Lord within himself, he becomes just as free as the Lord, even while in the body. Shetashvatara Upanishad 3:18. Therefore, a Krishna conscious person is free from both the outer and inner activities of the material body. So Prabhupada's reiterating the point again that Krishna consciousness is above these bodily designations. Something that I was thinking about when I was reading about the 9 gates is the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's a story, an allegorical story about this king named King Paranjana. And Narada Muni is instructing this, or he's narrating the story to King Prachini Barhishat. whose sons are the Prachettas, and the Prachettas, they're underwater praying this prayer that was taught to them constantly, because by saying that prayer, they can be relieved of all those material designations that they have. But anyway, so King Puranjan, or King Patrini Barhishat, has these very elevated sons, and he himself is elevated too, but somehow or other he gets captured by material energy in the form of performing yagyas. Yagyas for fruit of action, and it's kind of described. It's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam that when Narada saw this happening, he entered into the realm of sacrifice and saw a bunch of dead animal bodies just floating around. It's kind of described like that. They're bloody and so on. And Narada's like, "What are you doing here? Like, why are you doing this?" And then he starts to instruct him this allegorical tale of King Puranjana, and King Puranjana is kind of he's the enjoyer, so he's like us, and so he's telling the story to him to illustrate the danger of sense gratification. It's a beautiful story. And I hope that everyone can look into it. It's in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It illustrates the dangers of material sense gratification and not heeding the call of Krishna to just serve him, as we're instructed in the Gita. Manmana bhava madbhakto majiji mam namaskuru. We can just offer obeisances and worship him and love him fullest, we will be satisfied in that way. So yeah, King Prachini Barhisha, he fell into performing Vedic sacrifices, and what to say of the things that we fall into in our material life now. Performing Vedic sacrifices, that seems pretty elevated to me. And so, we're falling into these other very lower qualities, those of like, the dog eaters, yeah, we should be careful and continue our service to Krishna. And I like this last sentence in the purport. Therefore, a Krishna conscious person is free from both the outer and inner activities of the material body. So he's no longer disturbed by the mind, because his mind he has a mind meld with Krishna, as we learned in the Srimad Bhagavatam class a couple days ago, that Rishi Kumar taught, that once our activities are in accordance with Krishna, there's no difference between our mind and Krishna's mind, because we're performing the same acts. And that's the loving exchange that we can have with Krishna. Text 14. Oh, yes. We can take question. Yeah, go ahead. Radhastali Devidasi.
Hare Krishna. I wanted to add to the conversation, if that's okay.
Please.
So these verses you're reading are so nice. It's actually directly related to the Sri Upanishad, and I thought I'd share some of those mantras. There's 4 mantras I wanted to share specifically, if that's all right.
Please.
Okay. So going back to chapter 5 in the Gita, verse 12. No. Sorry. Well, I'll just read the Ishopanishad verses and then you'll be able to piece them together. So here, the first mantra says, everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. One may aspire to live for hundreds of years if he continuously goes on working in that way, for that sort of work will not bind him to the law of karma. There's no alternative to this way for man. He who systematically sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord, who sees all living entities as his parts and parcels, and who sees the Supreme Lord within everything, never hates anything or any being. One who always sees all living entities as spiritual sparks in quality one with the Lord becomes a true knower of things. What then can be illusion or anxiety for him? And one more. Can I read one more?
Please.
Only one who can learn the process of nescience and that of transcendental knowledge side by side can transcend the influence of repeated birth and death and enjoy the full blessings of immortality. So we're hearing here about, attaining peace. And Srila Prabhupada or the Sri Upanishad is saying that we can attain real peace by understanding that everything belongs to the Lord. And if we live in this way, with real knowledge of this, that the Lord is everything and he owns and controls everything, and we're receiving what we are allotted from him, then we could achieve real peace. And this is what I got out of the readings today. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you for sharing. It's very, very nice verses from the Sri Upanishad, where we can understand that if we see through Krishna, the eyes of Krishna, if we try to serve him, then we can fully become happy. That's the only way we can become happy. Is there any other points of discussion? No, but now I continue with reading. Okay, we'll go to text 14. The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. Report. The living entity, as will be explained in the 7th chapter, is one in nature with the Supreme Lord, distinguished from matter, which is another nature called inferior of the Lord. Somehow, the superior nature of the living entity has been in contact with material nature since time immemorial. The temporary body or material dwelling place which he obtains is the cause of varieties of activities and their resultant actions. Living in such a conditioned atmosphere, one suffers the results of the activities of the body by identifying himself in ignorance with the body. It is ignorance acquired from time immemorial that is the cause of bodily suffering and distress. As soon as the living entity becomes aloof from the activities of the body, he becomes free from the reactions as well. As long as he is in the city of body, he appears to be the master of it, but actually he is neither its proprietor nor controller of its actions and reactions. He is simply in the midst of the material ocean struggling for existence. The waves of the ocean are tossing him, and he has no control over them. His best solution is to get out of the water by transcendental Krishna consciousness. That alone will save him from all turmoil. Sometimes we think we're the controller of the body, but we don't have to look very far around us to understand that that's not the case. There's so many examples, the will could be there for someone to do something, but it's not happening. Their arm become paralyzed, but they can't even, someone could become paralyzed and they want to move their body, but they can't. So they're at the will of the modes of material nature. And all they have is desires. And sometimes the Lord fulfills those desires, and he does that as he likes. So we've been in this position of being entrapped in the body for time immemorial. There's no way of tracking back when we came into this material world. When we've taken bodies, we've taken so many bodies. We can't even remember what we ate for breakfast 2 weeks ago. So, what makes us think we can try to remember the past life or the one before that or the one before that? The information's not there for us to understand that. But we can understand that. We can't understand the sickness, which is that we're trapped in this material body. And we want to get out because we know that there's suffering in this material body. And we know there's a reality that's beyond this material body that we can attain, and that we've heard from the Bhagavad Gita, and we've heard from Srimad Bhagavatam, and we've heard from Guru and Sadhus about being able to attain this stage of bliss and complete knowledge, and have this constantly in the service of the Lord. So we just need to continue to follow that and diligently and sincerely. And soon we'll come to a point where we can serve the Lord in pure devotional service. It takes time. The process is slow. It's gentle. But if we stay sincere about sadhana and serving the Lord as much as we can, making everything about serving the Lord, then we can come out of this material existence. We don't have to seek after a golden cage. We can be okay with our wrought iron cage of material existence and serve the Lord from that level. We can be okay with living simply and knowing that simple life means we can think on higher principles. We don't have to think, how to get this and how to get that. We just have the necessities of life, and then focus on our spiritual awakening, which means we awaken to the fact that we're not our bodies, we're a spirit soul, and our constitutional position is to serve the Lord. Text 15. Oh, you got a question? Oh, go ahead.
I was wondering, what is the difference between this chapter, action in, was it Karma Yoga, action in Krishna consciousness, and then the third chapter, Karma Yoga, and why Krishna is speaking both?
I would have to read the third chapter again, to be honest. Is there anybody in the crowd who would know that? Jiva Goya, Prabhu?
I'm just going to say Mathuranath Prabhu happened to go over this a little bit last night. And he just mentioned the fact that, it was steps on the ladder. The third chapter is kind of a step for people that are climbing the yogic ladder, but karma yoga, action in Krishna consciousness, is for people that are finding Krishna consciousness, that are actually, getting closer to bhakti yoga. I guess I know that's as close as I have. I don't know if anyone else has an addition to that.
Very nice question, Prabhu.
Did that sound about right? Oh, there's Mathuranath. Could you just quickly elucidate the difference between chapter 3 and chapter 5, how karma, one's called karma yoga, one's called karma yoga in Krishna consciousness?
I mean, there's a few things, but briefly, the fifth appearance for somebody who has perfected karma yoga already.
and
And
now
now they've come to the platform of being in Krishna consciousness. So they're not only renouncing, but they're doing it in Krishna consciousness. Whereas karma yoga, where they're not only detached from the results of their karma or their of activity that they're performing, but they're doing it, dovetailing it in Krishna's service. So this is one. And yeah, there's a few other reasons. If somebody asks a question, yeah, I could go over a few things after class, and if you like.
Makes me want to know the answer too. We can read text 15. Oh, it's Magadari, probably.
I have a question about this point of seeking out a golden cage. So, due to my past activities, I have a certain body. And I experience a certain set of pleasure and pain that goes along with that, kind of that package. Sometimes in my own mind, and sometimes I hear other devotees explain that because they're not transcendental, or I may say this to myself, because I'm not transcendental, I need XYZ material thing to help me make it the next step in my Krishna consciousness advancement. So if this golden cage is more or less like better facilities, very supple body which has no pain or problems, or like that, then or a certain environment, then is it Maya if how to know when it's Maya to seek out those things when I've convinced myself that I need them for my advancement?
It's very, make personal decisions for ourselves, what we need based on our conditioning, like you said. We have a certain allotment we have in our lives. But if we're sincere in our sadhana, we're chanting our rounds and following the divine principles, then at that level, we can at least keep ourselves in the mode of goodness. And so we can be clear-headed about the decisions we make. We know this is temporary, this body we have. All those that surround us are in temporary bodies also. So we should always keep the main thing, right? Krishna consciousness should be the main thing in our life, especially for initiated devotees. We've taken a vow to do these things, to practice Krishna consciousness. So it's a big responsibility. It's a big austerity, to only take prasadam. And, of course, we can increase our standards as time goes on. We can become stronger in our practice. And over time, we'll have realizations about what's benefiting us and what's not benefiting us. Krishna says he'll give us the intelligence by which we can come to him. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dharami buddhi yogam tamena mam upayantite. So he's there for us if we're sincere. And of course, we check with our confidential teacher or guru, shiksha guru, someone that we trust, to reveal our minds about what our desires are. And that way we can understand, they can help us understand, okay, is this helpful to me, or is this not helpful to me? Like, they'll understand the situation of life I'm in, especially if they're an older devotee. They would have gone through these stages before. That's kind of my advice about it. It's very personal because each person has, like you said, different karma. Not everybody is set up to perform the same austerities in the same way, but that doesn't make them any less Krishna conscious. If someone's very wealthy, they could be using all of their funds for Krishna and all their facilities for Krishna. And also, making sure that their benefactors are also seeking after Krishna consciousness as much as possible. So there's not really a solid answer one way or the other, right? But we should seek guidance, especially if we're worried about the decision we're making. If we have some doubt about it, then we should reveal our minds about that doubt. But we also have our intelligence too. We through accumulating information and understanding the philosophy, understanding the wide variety of devotees there are right now, and also that there have been in our sampradaya. There's so many different ways to practice Krishna consciousness. Yeah. And Prabhupada opened that up even more. You have a question, Radhastali? You have follow-up, Prabhu? Or do you have follow-up or? Okay, great. Oh, sorry.
Hare Krishna. Can I add to your answer?
Yes.
I like how you said, if we're so concerned about something, we could ask Guru. I immediately thought of chapter 6, verse 16. And it says, there's no possibility of one's becoming a yogi or Arjuna if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough. And then I thought about the next verse also. He who is temperate in his habits of eating, sleeping, working, and recreation can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga systems. And this reminds me that, when we have a routine also, in our services and our sadhana and maintenance of our body, we can remain in Krishna consciousness most of the time, or at least try. But this is just a really nice, these are nice verses to meditate on, I think. And then Prabhupada also says, actually in the previous verse, text 15 in the purport, Yoga practice is not meant for attaining any kind of material facility. It is to enable the cessation of all material existence. One who seeks an improvement in health or aspires after material perfection is no yogi according to Bhagavad Gita. So I guess now I have like a question on this point, the same point. Maybe you'll answer the same thing, but it makes me think that some devotees, they have depression or like have serious mental health issues. And like for physical health, it makes sense, they would go to the doctor, but mental health, is this something that devotees should, go to? Should they go and get professional help, or should they just try to take shelter of scripture and guru and sadhu? What are your thoughts on this?
Like I would just follow what I said earlier, is that it's all a personal decision, and seeking mental health is not outside of chanting 16 rounds and following the 4 Gita principles. You're not violating any of those by doing that. We need to keep our health. Prabhupada was very caring about devotees' health. He cared very much, asking about the devotee if they were feeling okay so many times, or prescribing some process for alleviating some malady that the devotee has. There's certain things we can tolerate, of course, but that also depends on the constitution of the person. Yeah. Maternal Prabhu?
So Prabhu, sometimes I think, sometimes a thought comes to mind that devotees, they may develop a tendency to, with the endeavor to become equiposed, they may develop the tendency to, as Prabhupada says, like be very regulated in certain things, like their eating habits or their sleeping habits, or what they're doing at certain times of the day. And we're saying that we're doing this to become transcendental. But as soon as something throws them off their schedule, they may become more disturbed than somebody who does not have these habits. You understand?
Mhm.
So sometimes I wonder this question, like, how do we deal with this thinking like this? And how is this transcendental to just have everything so planned out, and then as soon as we don't have something, it's like, yeah, we can say, okay, I can go without, but in reality, like somebody who is not accustomed their mind and their body to be behaving in this way will not be as disturbed as the person who is so regulated, it seems.
So there's when one's following very strictly a routine or something, and they become disturbed after not being able to do that routine, there's some attachment to the routine. But we're not after attachment to routine. We're after attachment to Krishna. So if this routine helps us come to loving Krishna more, then that's great. That's an individual thing also, but Prabhupada says that this regulation or this strict routine can make us hard-hearted. should pay attention to more, what's benefiting us more, this thing or that thing. You know, someone has that kind of vision about taking prasadam in the night. You know, they know what happens if they take prasadam in the night, especially if they're fine tuning their eating, their prasadam schedule more and more. They'll understand the consequences of certain actions. And so they develop a routine based on that. But there's a time, place, and circumstance for all of these things. And it might be best to understand what's to be done and what's not to be done from the spiritual master or a Shiksha guru, something like that, who understands these things more than we do, has higher realization. Because we're all individuals, so we're all going to be following differently. We're going to have minute differences in the things we do on a daily basis and how we do things. We're not robots. It's a joy to have so many different kinds of personalities around, so we can appreciate those personalities and we can highlight the glorious things about them instead of trying to look at the things that are maybe not so glorious. And we should know our position too. We should try to understand our position amongst all the individuals and understand where we can, when we can say something, when we can't say something. I was kind of thinking about this little story that Prabhupada would tell about a monkey. So this monkey was in the forest, and before that, there was some tree cutters, and they would saw the trees down, and sometimes they wouldn't be able to finish their work, so they'd put a plug in the tree so it wouldn't like fall down one way or lean the other way, so they put the plug in the tree. And this monkey came along and was like, "What's this going on here?" He got curious, and then he yanked out the plug, and the tree fell on his tail and cut off his tail. So the point of the story Prabhupada was saying was, mind your own business. I really like that. Radha Stella and I have been saying that all. Mind your own business. You know, because some devotee might be disturbed or something, and we're like, "Oh man, what's going on with him?" But you know, with our peers, you know, we can ask and try to understand from them. Sometimes even with devotees that are not so, that are maybe a little bit more neophyte than we are, we can ask. But you know, we can understand there's like a pecking order and everything, and be able to console each other that way. And yeah, so that's just something I was thinking about. Thanks for the comment. I think that's all the time we have today. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for those online. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Vanchakalpa